A device the size of half a silver dollar has been beating inside an 84-year-old woman's chest every second since she disappeared. It is still beating right now, and it recorded everything that happened the night she vanished. The problem is, no one can reach it. Welcome back to Cold Case History. I am going to walk you through every detail of this case, the footage, the forensics, the suspect behavior, the DNA, and the digital evidence trail. And I am going to do it the way we always do it here, with the facts, with the victims at the center, and with a commitment to asking the hard questions that this investigation demands. If you are new here, subscribe now and hit the notification bell. We cover every update on cases like this one the moment they break. And trust me, this one is not finished breaking yet. Let's begin at the beginning. New video has surfaced tonight in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. Neighbors who say law enforcement never knocked on their door to ask about surveillance footage have come forward and released recordings showing several vehicles moving through the area in the early morning hours of February 1st. One of those vehicles appeared on camera approximately 8 minutes after Nancy's pacemaker last synced at 2:36 a.m. These neighbors lived just outside the 2-mile radius that police were publicly known to be canvassing for footage. But here's what matters. Their property is exactly a 7-minute drive from Nancy's home. That means a vehicle departing her neighborhood right at the moment that pacemaker went quiet could have reached that camera inside that 8-minute gap. Once the footage became public, investigators showed up at the neighbor's property. The home appears to have at least 3 exterior cameras mounted at different angles, which means there could be additional footage from additional perspectives that hasn't been shown to the public yet. 2:28 a.m. That was the last signal. The desert around Tucson doesn't get peaceful at night. It gets still in a way that carries sound, the kind of quiet where a garage door opening 2 houses down sounds like it's right next to you. Nancy Guthrie's garage door had closed at 9:50 the previous evening. She'd just come back from dinner at her daughter's house. Her son-in-law had stayed in his car in the driveway, waiting until she was inside, and the lights confirmed it before he pulled away. The porch light came on, then it went off, and somewhere in the hours between that moment and 2:28 in the morning, something changed inside her chest. A pacemaker does more than regulate a heartbeat. It watches every rhythm, every spike, every electrical irregularity, all of it time-stamped to the second and stored in the device's internal memory. Nancy Guthrie had one, and on the night she disappeared from her Tucson home, it was running. This is the story of an 84-year-old woman who went missing from her bedroom in the middle of the night, of her blood found near the front door, of a masked man caught on footage that nearly didn't survive long enough to matter, of a family that offered $1 million to bring her home and received only silence, and of a device smaller than a pocket watch that may contain the only unmanipulated record of what happened to her. The question no one has been able to answer, yet is the one her pacemaker might already know. Was she awake when they came? Nancy Ellen Guthrie was born on January 27, 1941, in Fort Wright, Kentucky. She came to Tucson with her family in the early 1970s and stayed for the rest of her life. More than 5 decades rooted in the same desert, the same neighborhood, the same church community. She married Charles Guthrie. Together they raised 3 children, Savannah, Annie, and Cameron. Charles worked in the mining industry. In 1988, he died of a heart attack while on an exploration trip in Mexico. He was 49 years old. Nancy was left to raise her 3 children on her own. Her daughter Savannah would later describe her as someone who faced impossible challenges with grit, without complaint, and always with faith. Cameron grew up to become an F-16 fighter pilot. Annie became a poet and a jeweler, still living in Tucson. Savannah became the co-anchor of NBC's Today Show. And Nancy stayed in the house she'd made home and watched all of it happen. By early 2026, Nancy was 84. Sharp. No cognitive issues. But her body had slowed. She couldn't walk more than 50 yards unassisted. She depended on a pacemaker to keep her heart in rhythm. And she took a daily cardiac medication she could not go without for more than 24 hours without serious risk. Think carefully about what that means. A device inside her body, keeping her heart going. A pill she needed every single day to stay alive. Both of those things were still sitting in her house the morning she wasn't. On the evening of January 31st, a Friday, Nancy went to her daughter Annie's home for dinner. She arrived around 5:32 p.m. They ate together and spent the evening. Afterward, Annie's husband, Tommaso Cioni, drove her home. Cioni is 50 years old, born in Italy. He teaches 6th grade science and astrobiology at a Tucson school, plays bass in a local band, and writes poetry. He pulled up to Nancy's house at approximately 9:48 p.m. The Pima County Sheriff later confirmed he waited until she was safely inside before leaving. He was the last confirmed person to see her. Nancy's home was in the Catalina foothills, a quiet stretch of North Tucson near Skyline Drive and Campbell Avenue. The kind of suburb where porch lights stay on and people trust the dark. She had a Google Nest doorbell camera at the front entrance. It could detect motion, record video, and recognize faces. She just didn't pay the $6 a month for the subscription that would have saved any of that footage to the cloud. Her garage door closed at 9:50 p.m. A regular Friday night for a woman who had lived alone in the desert for years. 4 hours went by. No alarm, no emergency call, no disturbance. Annie and Coyote were nearby. Neighbors had Ring cameras. The foothills were covered in suburban surveillance equipment. And none of it caught anything, because no one knew to look yet. 1:47 a.m. Nancy's doorbell camera went offline. Not a malfunction. Not a dead battery. Authorities confirmed the camera was physically removed from the wall. Whoever was there didn't just obscure it. They took it. 2:12 a.m. The camera's motion detection software generated an alert. Something had been detected, but the camera was already gone, and with no subscription, there was no cloud to catch it. The system flagged something and had nowhere to put it. Blood was found on the front porch. A trail of drops near the door. DNA testing confirmed it belonged to Nancy. A law enforcement source speaking to CBS reported additional blood was found inside the home as well, though the sheriff declined to specify locations. Savannah Guthrie, speaking in a video on day 24 of the search, said their mother was taken from her bed in the dark of night. The sheriff used similar language in a separate interview. That is as close as any one official has come to describing where Nancy was when it happened. To be precise about what is and isn't confirmed, investigators have not publicly verified blood on the bed or that bedsheets were removed. Those details have circulated online, but they haven't come from official sources. This channel does not treat unverified claims as fact. What is confirmed is blood at the door, blood inside the home, and a daughter saying her mother was taken from her bed. The case moved fast in the media, and the first name to break into public conversation wasn't a suspect. It was a family member. On February 4th, podcast host Ashley Banfield cited an unnamed law enforcement source claiming that Tommaso Coyote, Nancy's son-in-law, the man who had driven her home that night, may be the prime suspect. Banfield also reported that Annie Guthrie's car had been towed and impounded. 2 days later, Sheriff Nanos responded directly. He said that no one had been listed as a suspect and called it reckless to label someone as such when that person could very well be a victim themselves. On February 16th, all 3 of Nancy's adult children and their spouses, including Coyote, were publicly cleared by the Pima County Sheriff's Office. Not persons of interest. Cleared. Back to the timeline. 2:28 a.m. The pacemaker app on Nancy's iPhone registered a Bluetooth disconnection. The device inside her body could no longer reach the phone on her nightstand. Standard Bluetooth range on a pacemaker runs between 10 and 15 feet. She had either moved beyond that range or she had been moved. That disconnection was the last digital trace of Nancy Guthrie. The rest of that night passed without anyone knowing anything was wrong. The following morning was a Sunday. Nancy had a standing weekly habit. She would go to a friend's home to watch a live-streamed church service together. She didn't show. Her friend called the family. Relatives went to check on her around 11:56 a.m. and called 911 at 12:03 p.m. Deputies were on the property by 12:15. Her cell phone was there. Her wallet. Her car. Her medication, the one she couldn't survive without. Everything was in the house except Nancy. By the next day, the Pima County Sheriff's Department had classified it as a criminal investigation. The FBI entered the case alongside Customs and Border Protection. Search and rescue teams deployed dogs, drones, and aerial units. They found nothing. This is where the nearness of everything in this case starts to feel crushing. Nancy had a doorbell camera. It captured images of a masked figure at her front door. But because there was no subscription, the footage didn't go to the cloud. It sat in residual back-end systems, and it took 10 days and active cooperation from the private company to recover it. 10 days. The answer was sitting in a server. And for 10 days, no one could see it. On February 10th, FBI Director Kash Patel released 4 black and white images pulled from that recovered footage. A figure at Nancy's front door, masked, armed, gloved, carrying an Ozark Trail 25-liter backpack sold exclusively at Walmart. The figure reached up and tapped the camera, then covered the lens using foliage from a potted plant on the porch. Authorities described the suspect as male, between 5 feet 9 inches and 5 feet 10 inches, average build, with a firearm secured in a universal fit holster. 2 law enforcement sources later told NBC News that one of the released images, the one where the suspect appears without the backpack, was captured on a different occasion, earlier than the night of the disappearance. You may have come to that house before. If you're still here, subscribe, Because cases like this only work when people stay and tell us where you're watching from. I love seeing my global family represent. Drop your country or city in the comments. We've gone through the blood, the camera removal, the masked figure, the family, the timeline. But there's something else here. Something that hasn't gotten the attention it deserves. The device inside Nancy's chest. A pacemaker sits just beneath the skin, usually near the collarbone. It is roughly half the size of a silver dollar. Its function is simple on the surface. When the heart rate drops below a safe threshold, the device sends a small electrical impulse to bring it back into rhythm. What it does constantly, and without interruption, however, is monitor. It logs every heart rate reading, every arrhythmia, every cardiac irregularity, all of it time-stamped and stored in its internal memory. That data does not require Bluetooth to exist. It doesn't need a phone connection. The device records regardless of whether it's transmitting. It has been doing this inside Nancy Guthrie's body for years, and it was doing it on the night of January 31st. Here is where things get complicated. That data has not been accessed. Nancy hasn't been found. Without being within Bluetooth range of a paired device, the pacemaker can't transmit, and her phone was left behind in the house. But cardiologists have confirmed the device was recording every heartbeat that night. The manufacturer has been in active contact with the FBI to explore ways to detect or retrieve the data remotely. Which means somewhere in that device's memory, there exists a record of everything that happened inside Nancy Guthrie's chest between 9:50 p.m. and 2:28 a.m. And that record could answer the question that no investigator has been able to get to yet. Was she awake? Think through this in 3 ways. If the pacemaker logged a gradual elevation in heart rate beginning around 1:47 a.m., when the camera went dark, that would tell one story. Nancy heard something. A sound from the porch. Movement outside. The quiet of the foothills carrying something it shouldn't. She lay in bed with her heart climbing, awake, listening, knowing something was wrong before whoever it was reached her. If the data shows a sudden sharp spike at a single timestamp, no build-up, just a flat resting rhythm, and then a jolt, that tells a different story entirely. She was asleep. The disturbance found her before she had any time to understand it. No warning, no moment to process, taken in the most literal sense from her bed. And then there is the third possibility, the one that sits differently than the others. If the pacemaker shows no spike at all, if her heart rate stayed within normal sleep range through the entire window, through the camera removal, through the motion alert, through the Bluetooth disconnection, then she wasn't afraid. Let that land. If there was no fear response, what does that mean? Did she know the person standing at her door? Did she open it herself? Was something given to her before her body could register a threat? Each of those scenarios changes the shape of this case entirely. Each one points somewhere different. The pacemaker may already know. The investigation just has to find it first. The FBI isn't waiting to recover Nancy to start chasing that data. In mid-February, law enforcement deployed what's known as a signal sniffer, a sensor built to detect low-power Bluetooth transmissions. A company called Parsons confirmed that its Bluefly units were being used in the search. The equipment was mounted on a helicopter running slow, low passes over the Tucson area, scanning for the unique Bluetooth signature of Nancy's pacemaker. The device transmits a signal every 2 to 3 minutes. Unamplified, the range is 10 to 15 feet. With high-gain antennas, that range stretches to several hundred feet. But you still have to be in the right location, the right altitude, at the right moment. Morgan Wright, director of the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases, described the pacemaker as the most unbiased witness in this entire investigation. He called its telemetry data the foundation for every next step, not the only piece, but one of the most critical. There is one more thing that most people haven't thought about. When a pacemaker patient dies, the device doesn't stop. It keeps delivering electrical impulses, small microcurrents, not enough to restart anything. But the device doesn't know that. It just keeps doing what it was built to do. Medical examiners have to manually deactivate a pacemaker before a body arrives at the morgue. Nancy's device has 6 or 7 years of battery life remaining. Wherever it is right now, it is still going. 29 days. That is how long Nancy Guthrie had been missing as of this recording. And every lead has followed the same pattern. It pulls close, it feels like a breakthrough, and then it stops short. Investigators recovered a black glove approximately 2 miles from Nancy's home. DNA testing confirmed it contained genetic material from an unknown male. The glove appeared consistent with the pair worn by the suspect in the doorbell footage. It was submitted to CODIS, the FBI's national DNA database. No match. The glove DNA also didn't match samples taken from inside the home. Mixed DNA from the residence itself, involving multiple contributors, has created processing difficulties at a private lab in Florida. The sheriff acknowledged that resolving the DNA evidence could take weeks, months, or in a worst case, close to a year. But investigative genetic genealogy remains an active option. C.C. Moore, one of the foremost experts in the field, spoke publicly about the case. She said the process could take anywhere from hours to months, but when the results arrive, they will be conclusive. She added that if she were the person responsible, she would be genuinely frightened right now, because this method will identify them. It is only a matter of when. Then there are the ransom notes. Multiple notes were sent to local media outlets, not to the family. They demanded cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. At least one note set the figure at $6 million. Two stated deadlines passed by February 9th with no resolution and no proof of life. A separate note sent directly to the Guthrie family was later determined to be a hoax. A man in California was charged in connection with it. Experts have noted that ransom communications sent to media rather than directly to the family don't follow the established pattern of a conventional kidnapping. Former FBI agent Robin Drake offered a different interpretation of the overall case, describing it as a home invasion that escalated beyond what was planned. The digital trail is where the case is both most promising and most agonizing. The sheriff confirmed that investigators are combing through cell tower data, looking for unrecognized devices that connected to towers near Nancy's home during the overnight hours. If the suspect had a phone, even briefly, there may be a record of it. Forensic analyst Barnhart pointed to the Brian Kohberger case as a direct precedent. Kohberger powered down his phone before the Idaho murders, but he switched it back on as he drove away. That single moment of connectivity was enough to place him. The public has also raised questions about other potential data sources: fitness apps, Wi-Fi routers logging unrecognized devices, cell towers recording connection attempts from phones passing nearby. If someone walked that neighborhood in the weeks before January 31st, scoping the property, an app like Strava or AllTrails might have captured it. None of these lines have been officially confirmed as active investigative threads. But that kind of data doesn't disappear quickly, and the FBI has the resources to pull it. On the night of February 13th, a Pima County SWAT team and FBI agents executed a search warrant at a residence roughly 2 miles from Nancy's home, near East Orange Grove Road and North 1st Avenue. Simultaneously, investigators moved on a gray Range Rover sitting in the parking lot of a Culver's restaurant nearby. They photographed the vehicle, opened the trunk, held a sheet up to block the view from bystanders, and had it towed away. The driver had already been pulled over in a traffic stop. Sheriff Nanos later confirmed the man was considered a person of interest. He cooperated with investigators and was released. No arrests followed. No sign of Nancy was found at the searched residence. 2 additional vehicles were impounded from the property, a blue Subaru and a white van. Close. Once again close. And then nothing. A Ring camera belonging to a neighbor 2.5 miles from Nancy's home captured 12 vehicles passing through around 2:30 that morning, beyond the original 2-mile canvassing perimeter. The FBI expanded its search radius. Which vehicle, if any, was relevant? That question hasn't been answered. As of March 1, 2026, day 29 of the search, the Pima County Sheriff's Department has restructured its approach, redirecting resources toward a dedicated detective team assigned exclusively to Nancy's case. The FBI has compiled roughly 10,000 hours of video footage. More than 20,000 tips have come in, with 1,500 more arriving in the days following the family's announcement of a $1 million cash reward. Over 100 law enforcement personnel are actively working the case. Nancy's home has been returned to the family. The sheriff says this is not a cold case, but the pacemaker data is still out of reach, and Nancy Guthrie is still missing. Savannah Guthrie stepped away from NBC, including her coverage of the Winter Olympics, to stay in Tucson. She and her siblings have continued releasing videos, pleading, praying, putting everything they have into the search. In one of those videos, Savannah said something that people couldn't stop repeating. She said they still believed in a miracle, and also that their mother might be lost, that she might already be. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The family also donated $500,000 to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. While searching for their own mother, they turned toward every other family living inside the same nightmare. This case is defined by proximity. The camera was there, the subscription wasn't. The pacemaker was recording, the phone was out of range. The son-in-law was minutes away, the last person to see her. Neighbors had cameras. Cell towers had data. A DNA profile exists, waiting somewhere in a genealogy database to be connected to a name. Digital footprints may be preserved in a router's memory, in tower logs, in a fitness app that tracked someone moving through those streets in the dark long before January 31st ever arrived. Everything in this case is close. And the closest witness of all is a device the size of $50, still powered, still pacing, still logging every heartbeat it can reach, locked inside a body that no one has found. The pacemaker doesn't know when to stop. It just keeps going. And so does this search. If this case matters to you, do something with that. Subscribe to Cold Case History so you never miss an update. Hit the notification bell, because when this case breaks, and it will, you need to be here for it. Share this video with someone who follows true crime, because the more eyes on Nancy Guthrie's story, the more pressure stays on this investigation. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on the pacemaker evidence, the suspect footage, the DNA, or any detail that stood out to you. This community has contributed to real investigative conversations before, and your perspective matters here. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She is someone's mother, someone's grandmother, someone's anchor. She deserves to be found. Stay with us.